Hey guys, welcome to the Real Estate Startup Podcast. My name is Benjamin. Michaela with me today. She is my co-host. She's amazing. And we are excited to talk to Kevin Rhoderick, who is a Reading realtor, investor. It was really fun just kind of navigating this conversation. I wasn't sure where it might go, but we really dived into some creative real estate stuff, specifically subject to, and then even some novations, which we haven't talked a lot about on the show. I actually was in a mastermind a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of talk about novations, and I was going to jump into more of that. It was cool. I've got a little bit of an understanding, so it was fun to kind of hear more about that and opportunities. I think one of my big takeaways from him was that there are transaction coordinators who focus on Sub2 and Novations, because that's the most overwhelming part for me on these type of deals is the contracts. It's like, how do you make a Sub2 work? How do you make a Novation work? Because it's mostly in the contract. And so it's cool to know that there are TCs as well as agents that focus on this specifically. So yeah, that was my big takeaway. What about you, Michaela?
Yeah, no, I was really pumped when he brought up, I love the concept of Sub2, subject to, and also novation agreements specifically. So it was really cool to me that he's done that and we were able to talk through that. And it's something I've always been really interested in. And it is actually technically the very first investment project I ever did was, I guess, technically a novation agreement. But I just love this stuff. So yeah, I'm excited for everyone to hear. And let us know what you think and enjoy the show.
Today we'll be kind of talking about your story and hear more about, what you invest in, the properties you buy. And I think, some of the things that really stand out that, I would love to kind of talk more about is, I know you have a boutique hotel in Florida, the fact that you're investing out of state, you live in California. I think that's a big deal. I'm really curious to hear how that's going. You've bought property on the coast of California, and that's still, it's a good 3-4 hour drive from here. And then another thing that I think is really interesting is you always talk about those all-in-one loans. I feel like that's you. You're that like all-in-one guy. And so I think a lot of people don't know about that. And so I think that would be fun to talk about today. So, awesome. But yeah, let's start from the beginning. Like, tell us, who you are, where you're from, and how'd you get started in real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, born and raised here in Reading. Tried escaping a couple times after high school. Thought there was a bigger city, a better life somewhere else, and got about right back here. So here I am. Got married in 2018. She was from Florida, so she moved out here from Florida, originally from Ohio, and then in Florida when we met. So came out from Florida, and I'm a second generation real estate agent. My dad did it for about 20 years or so. So I kind of always had real estate around me all the time. Was at the dinner table, the discussions, just always understood it. Just didn't really have a passion for it until a few years after high school. I would say I really got the passion and the itch to really get into it and saw the excitement and just what you could do with it. So jumped into it, got my license in 2016. So I'm a little just over 8 years of being licensed as an agent. And then my wife got into it. We were married in 2018, and then we both jumped into the investing side of it in 2020 is when we really got going.
Wow.
We sat on the sidelines a lot, just kind of watching different deals, different things, trying to figure out the best way to do it. And we really tried an approach of no money down as much as possible. It's just kind of our approach. And I think just working with investors, I've really had a lot of privileges to work with some really high net worth individuals in this town and just kind of learn the way they've worked and done things. It kind of gave me the education of how to structure deals and go forward like that. And so our first investment properties we purchased were a couple duplexes. They were a new construction. We bought them from the builder direct, and we didn't put anything down. We actually we transferred, not only was it no money down, we even got to transfer debt we had on our personal residence onto this investment because of the lender that we worked with. And what they were doing is they were doing what we call a 1031 exchange, and they didn't have the full funds for the purchase, but they said, hey, if we can get this much, can you qualify for the financing for the rest? I had the good income at the time, so that's how we put that together. And that was kind of my first introduction into real estate of investing, was in the summer of 2020. And yeah, it's just been a wild journey since.
Where were those properties? The duplexes?
Mission Dioro. Yeah, so we bought those. They weren't, I would like to be more like Ben and be more hands-on, and or we're getting that direction and being more of the add value side of things. But due to our careers and everything we have running, we just don't have the time right now to scale that as fast. And so we were buying turnkeys. So we just bought turnkey properties. We didn't really know the full plan. We're like, these could be long-term holds for us, or we might sell these. And so what we did is they were vacant. So we had a good few years of just really strong rental income, and some furnished and some not. And we were able to provide those numbers for the next buyer for it to be a good investment for them, and went to our next step.
So let me just understand this correctly. You bought 2 duplexes with no money down, and you had a primary home where you put that on the same loan as these 2 duplexes?
A portion of it. Yeah, not the full amount. So the full backstory is, when I got married in 2018, my wife had some student loans. She's a nurse. And I'm like, don't want student loans, don't want to deal with that. So I sold my house and just paid those off completely out of our equity. So therefore, we came into our second house with no equity, nothing. So we get pretty creative on structuring that. We did a seller finance deal. It was right after the car fire, so there was a lot of different options at that time. So we did seller finance at that point. And to just alleviate some of that debt, we put towards the investment property. Interesting.
So you've refinanced out of that seller financing and put it into this one loan. That's incredible. So What happened next?
Yeah. So again, I think there's a real advantage of being an agent, just as we're watching the market all the time. We're seeing what buyers are asking for. We're seeing the phone calls. We're seeing the returns. So I started doing the math, and I'm like, wow, we paid, I think, about $340 for each one at the time. And I started doing the math, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure these are almost worth double what we paid for it. And wow. I'm talking only in a couple of years. So I was like, does it make sense to hold on to these? I didn't really know where the market was going. So then I started getting some off-market offers because people were just looking in that subdivision. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty crazy. So we put them on the market, and from there, and then we ended up selling those. And then we did the 1031 exchange into the Florida property.
Cool. That's amazing.
That's
so
really
what can we talk about the numbers? Like what was your profit from that? And, tell us about the Florida deal and how that all played out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the Mission Dioro, so again, we bought them each for $340 is on the record there. We had a little cost with furnishing some of the units. We did some furnished, some not. We kind of did a mixture. It took us some time to kind of figure out the best play for that. And then we ended up selling both of those for $600,000 a piece. And so we rolled that over to the Florida property, and it was cash. I actually listed them for $550, and my phone was ringing off the hook. And some people were asking for bidding, like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And I was leaving out of town, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bump these up to $599. And if somebody can give us this, then we're good to go. And that's what ended up happening. So,
wow. So cool.
Yeah. So we just took all that equity. So again, we had debt, and we had additional debt from our home that we transferred over, some of it, not all of it. And then we just transferred all that to 1031 exchange, which is a little stressful because you're under a pretty short time on that. So,
yeah. Tell us a little bit more about the 1031. What is that, and how did that all play out for you?
So, we had a property that was actually, I knew was going to be coming to the market that I was talking to the sellers about. It was actually on the river. And I was like, man, this would be an incredible Airbnb. Airbnb was doing really good at the time, had 2 units. I was pretty excited about it. So I was like, we could sell these and then just go over here and purchase this property in the river.
This is in Reading, right?
Yeah, I was in Reading. And after talking to the sellers and everything, they just weren't quite ready to sell. They were going to take a little bit longer to get the market. They were finishing up a renovation than what we had our timeline. So we were like, okay, we'll just see how this goes. And in the meantime, we were down in Florida. My wife's family, of courses in Florida. She's from there. And so we were down there and we were just at the beach, just enjoying a little time after a work conference, and started seeing the market, what was happening down there. And long story short, I ended up on Zillow and found this property. And, at first it was already under contract. So we missed out on it. But the timeline of when we got our properties under contract just worked out perfectly.
So it fell through contract and then you ended up getting it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so it was under contract. It had a bank loan. They were looking to purchase it, and it fell out. The appraisal was done. Everything came in at value. The way I understood it is one of the partners of the buyers just backed out. He was the capital of the deal and the down payment essentially. And so he was no longer interested. And so they no longer had the funds to be able to execute the purchase. And so the seller reached back out to me and I'm like, actually, we just put these two under contract. It's perfect timing. So
nice. So tell us more about that property you bought. And
yeah, I'm curious too.
Yeah. Yeah. So we purchased it. We don't own it 100% outright. We have partners on it too. Honestly, we like structuring everything with partners. There's a multitude of reasons. One is we like to travel. We like to be out. We understand that people like to travel, and we like to know that someone's always here taking care of something or can take care of an emergency issue. We also like the idea of that it also combines all their expertise and financials into it too. So whenever we're dealing with a loan or anything like that, we can look at the whole entity of all the partners together. So that's been helpful. So we put in a good chunk of it, about 3/4 or so. And then we had some partners putting a little bit more into it as well. And again, these are all funds that we didn't just create ourselves. I mean, we put a little bit extra into it, but the rest was all from the sale of the 1031 property. That was the majority of the funds. We might have put down the deposit, some funds like that, but we didn't put anything else down more than that. So we ended up buying it. We bought it at 4.9. We put down 25%, which was a little nerve-wracking, only 25%, because a lot of commercial lenders here want at least 30-35% down. That's what they're asking for. And we were able to get the seller to carry the note at the 25%. And so we made that work. And so that's where we are.
So tell us what is the property? What property did you buy?
So it's a 12-unit boutique hotel in St. Pete Beach, Florida. It's about a half mile to the beach, right down the road. And it's ran kind of there's no front office. So it's ran more of an Airbnb style. We're on Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, Priceline, just all those major channels. And the thing that was most appealing to us about this property was the snowbirds coming down for months at a time. We would look at the bookings. They had bookings in February and March that were 5, 6, 7 weeks at a time. So it's you're getting this Airbnb nightly rate, but you're getting it for 5 to 7 weeks at a time, which is pretty phenomenal. Just having way less turnover was just really valuable to us. It's a pretty cool property as far as the layout. It's a U-shaped property, which is pretty neat with the pool in the middle. And it's great for family reunions. While we were down there, it was really fun talking to people that have come and visited the property. And they're like, oh, this is great for our family. We can see the kids from the pool in all the rooms. It's super safe. It's gated. They really like that area a lot. So there was a lot of different things that I was seeing that I was like, yeah, this is going to be good there's a lot of potential to also increase income, but at the same time, there's a lot of reasons why people actually book this property over other properties.
So how's the property performing? Is it what you thought it would be? Is it doing better, worse? What have been the challenges that you're seeing?
Not what we thought. A lot of it is just the current economy and where we're going with traveling and everything. So, and then the other part of it is just where we're located at. I mean, if we really live there and we're on site, we feel really confident we could do a lot with that property. I'm a firm believer that whatever you manage yourself, you're going to make the best that you can. You can't have any manager meet up to what you're trying to do. So we ended up bringing on a new management company that's taking care of, it's a full service management company. It's taking care of everything. But the property right now is just a long-term buy and hold for us. We don't plan on doing anything with it for a long time. And for us to really increase the income, we would have to do something pretty drastic. We'd have to either move down there or really get aggressive with some type of marketing. But right now it's paying our bills, and it's just a long-term buy and hold for us.
Kevin, did you guys, you may have said this, but did you do much to it, or was it pretty much totally turnkey?
No, it was pretty much renovated right before we bought it. So the seller did all the renovations to it, and then he had it for about a little over a year and got all the income up in the bookings, and then we took over at that point. So we've just been upgrading it along the way, like just doing different efficiency and AC and things like that, but everything else has been taken care of. So
gotcha. Okay. Interesting. All right. And so can I ask you some practical questions about, you say it's an Airbnb style, kind of non-front desk boutique hotel. How does that, what kind of systems do you guys have in place when it comes to like the doors, and are you using a certain kind of Bluetooth lock that was that already all in place, or is that something you had to do?
Yeah, no, most of it was already in place. It was kind of funky. When we purchased it, it had two different systems. So you'd have like two different locks, and you have to keep track of both apps. And I'm like, this is not going to work. Even if it costs extra money, let's just make it all one system. So we did bring it over to one system, and then it's pretty user friendly. I mean, we just generate codes. Our management company now will just generate a code as it comes up, and then just sends that over to them, and they have access to the lock. The management company we have there, they're at that property every day, if not more than 2 or 3 times, just with turnovers, changing rooms, any issues or anything comes up, or just when they drive by, they just stop in and check on the pool grounds and all that too. So we have pretty good, I think that's really important with a property like that, to have the presence of somebody there. So it's not just like an Airbnb, it's more like boutique hotel and Airbnb where you still have support, that's right there. So, but locks and everything, they were all pretty much there. It's not like we converted over that way or anything like that. Yeah.
Super cool. What about like amenities? What have you found that you have that's working for you, or are there things that you're like, if we had this, I think this would have been really helpful?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So hot tubs aren't super popular in Florida because how warm it is. Like they're not popular at all. But if you do have the hot tub, you're probably the only one in the area that has the hot tub, and there is that person that's going to be looking for it. So we've talked about, one of the units is a 2-bedroom suite, and we've talked about taking the backyard and making a little bit of a backyard section fenced off, put a little hot tub in there or something, make it a little bit more of a special unit compared to the other ones. We've heard people talk about our management company too, has provided some recommendations like that. And then anything for kids, like if we could do like a little miniature golf course, or if we could put anything in like that, that would be pretty neat. We've also had people say about live music, different events, fires, just a lot of different things like that. I think would be pretty cool. I think it's more about creating a culture for that property and have people going there and actually staying there and having a good time, rather than just, we're just staying at Airbnb. Like there's a reason why they're going there.
Right. Yeah. Cause I just hear so much right now about like, if you want to have a standout Airbnb, I have just a single family Airbnb rental in Panama City Beach. And I bought that and flipped it last year. Well, it's technically a burr, but it's kind of like, what can you do to just be a step above everyone else in an area that's just like saturated with tourism or saturated with other locations. So it's just been interesting doing some research on what are the things you can do. I've thought about putting a little miniature golf course in my backyard there too, because it's like people seem to dig it. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, we have a home in the garden track. And we had a side yard that was just a mess. It's just getting muddy. The garden track's in Redding, sorry. And it's just getting a mess, muddy and flooding. And we're like, what are we going to do with this little space? And we're like looking at hot tub, all these different options. And we are now with partners, and they're like, hey, how about we do a miniature golf course? I'm like, okay, we'll see how that goes. So we put it in this green, and we got tons of bookings. Like just kids just love it. And not just bookings, we got a lot of repeat bookings and then referrals. And then we started seeing all these bookings coming outside of Airbnb, like people just reaching out to us.
Wow.
And we realized like they just like those extra little amenities, something for them to do. So
yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to turn my yard into a turf golf course.
Was that hard to build, and like what did that cost you to create?
The miniature golf course, our business partners did it. they were actually living there on the property at the time. It's a 2-unit property. And so they were living there. And so they had this idea of using that space. And so we just agreed to pay for the materials, and they were glad just to build themselves. So I don't know the exact cost on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so in addition to your boutique hotel experience, kind of backing up big picture, what does your portfolio kind of look like overall right now? And it sounds like you have property in Redding, some in Florida. Do you invest anywhere else?
Yeah, no. So California, I try the best I can in California. It's just, I think what Ben has, the add value is huge here. And just to find something to add the value, then you can make those numbers make sense. And then there's also a lot of people that don't want to deal with the tenants as far as California goes and the rights and everything. So those are a couple big ones for us in California we're careful of. So we purchased with the partnership as well a self-storage facility in Missouri that we run, and it's probably my favorite asset class is self-storage.
Really?
I really like. I think it's great for where we're at and on our walk and like with work and everything and our just how busy we are, because storage it has a whole different business model to it, and it's more of a business than it is real estate is what we're really seeing too. Mm-hmm. And so that's been really great. We just kind of did an entry level, kind of test the waters, see how it would go. And we've really enjoyed that. So that's in Missouri. And then we have some single family homes that we purchased subject to, one in South Carolina and one in Arkansas.
Wow.
And those are just single family homes. And then that would be it for out of state.
Can you tell us about your subject to experience in both of those places and what was the draw? We've talked a little bit about it on this podcast, but not like a ton. So it'd be cool to just hear your experience and how it went both with the seller and I don't know who it was, who all was involved and et cetera.
Yeah, no. So essentially we sold our primary home and moved, and we had such a great rate on that I was like, we have to exchange this and go get another house with this rate, because I feel like we're just losing this great mortgage. And so once we did that, then I was just on the hunt and the search for this home that's subject to. So we ended up, the one in South Carolina is 2.25% interest rate. And it was a few years in on the mortgage, and I just couldn't believe it. Like it was a fairly newer home and like 1,800 square feet, and like the payment's like $900, including tax and insurance. And I just was like, that's unbelievable. Like I couldn't even believe it in that area. And
that's
so
crazy.
It was, subject to, there's a lot to it for sure. I highly recommend having a team if you're going to go after subject to, like have a creative team that knows what they're doing. They've come across all the roadblocks, the hurdles, the stresses, everything. I think, being that I've been working in traditional real estate for so long, I think going into that, like without, thinking it's a traditional real estate deal, it's not. There's a lot to it that's so different. And so we use Creative TC, and they were phenomenal. They're a transaction coordination team, and they just charge to take care of the transaction, and they interact between the buyer and the seller, mortgage company, whoever they need to. They just are that middle player to figure it all out. And they are a little pricey. Some people think they're a little expensive, but in the end, what they provide for you is pretty phenomenal. So essentially what we did is we took over a contract from a wholesaler on that one. And I saw some red flags, but not as many as they did. And I sent the contract to them, and they started reviewing it. And they're like, there's a lot we got to get changed and get this corrected to protect everyone involved. And so they did a lot of the work. Honestly, they looked it over. We got on some calls like this, went over everything, figured out how to best structure it, how to protect everyone's interest, and just move forward in that way. So that one's a long-term. Yeah, it's a long-term rental. We just installed a tenant for 12 months, have a property management company there. And, I think subject to is great. I don't think it's the answer to everything, and it's always going to be the perfect answer depending on the loan type. There's a lot to know about it, but I think it's a phenomenal way to go, and it's a good option if everybody's on board and it's a good situation. The seller for this one, her daughter was in this home. She had to move for work and relocate, and she was like beyond thrilled that we were going to purchase this home for her, because it was just going to free up this monthly debt that she didn't know what she was going to do with it. And it needed work. It was definitely some a rehab there. We put some funds into it, but she was like, just hearing her voice of how excited she was that this liability was taken off was pretty cool. It was a win-win for everybody. So
Yeah.
Two questions I have. One, did you say you sold your primary home and did a 1031 into this?
No, we didn't do a 1031. We just took the 2-year exemption.
Gotcha. You're saying you didn't have to pay taxes on the sale because you lived in it 2 out of 5 years.
So we had a 2% rate on our primary home. And since we sold that home, we lost that mortgage essentially. Yeah. And I was like, I want to have another low mortgage like that. So
when you talked about your creative team, is that just the creative transaction coordinator, or are there other people in the team that helped make this transaction possible?
So creative TC, I mean, is a lot of people that work for this company. You get assigned to what they call transaction coordinator. And in real estate, there's a lot of transaction coordinators on our side too that helps out real estate agents. But this is a whole other type of transactional coordinator. I mean, there's just a whole lot more they're dealing with. I would say a lot more roadblocks and a lot more challenges. And so they assign you one, but they have a whole team that they go between to get answers from. So like if they don't have the answer, they can go to the next level to try to get the answer for you. But they do everything. They'll do all the way from the contract. I mean, you could essentially find a deal, call them, tell them this is the deal you want, this is the seller's information, the terms, the price. They'll draft the contract, they'll write the whole contract, and they'll walk it all the way through to the finish line.
Awesome.
And so one of my big things is who, not how. And I feel like this is just a great answer to the who, not how, because you start thinking like, was that legal? Especially as, a real estate background, like, am I doing this right? Did I sign that right? And they answer all those questions for you.
Yeah.
So how did you learn all this? Like, I mean, jumping into this, how did you have confidence to do this? And how did you find the deal? I mean, you said a wholesaler, but how'd you get connected with that wholesaler?
So first question of how I got into it, honestly, YouTube. YouTube is a university. I've learned so much, especially during COVID when everything was shut down. I watched a lot of YouTube and just studied out and found what to do, what not to do, how to do it. And so I've heard of Sub2 before, but I've heard of it in the way of, hey, this seller's behind, she needs 20, 30,000 to catch up on her payments, something like this. But hey, if you bring in that 20, 30,000, you might make up 100,000 on the equity side. And so I've heard of it as far as that, like of getting ahead instantly. I never really understood it as like, you could just buy a deal, no equity. You're just taking over the mortgage it is, but you're getting this great rate. But then of course, when rates shot up to 7.5 plus, it was like, oh, wow, that's still a great deal. Even if it's the same price, you're getting that great rate. So that kind of reignited my field to learn more about it and get into it. And I went through the whole Pace Morby program and like went that direction and learned just what it looked like. But I studied it. I was on the Facebook groups and I studied it for just probably a good 6 months and just really saw what was happening. But I think I had a whole different perspective as an agent looking at Sub2 transactions, because I know how difficult it is to like get approved for financing and have seasoned funds and have credit and have all this. And so when I started seeing these deals pop up that are like 20, 30,000, you're all in and this house is yours and the mortgage rate is 2-3%, and you don't need any income to verify that. You don't need any tax returns. I mean, I was sold. I was like, that's incredible. Like, I mean, walking these clients, I mean, I have clients that put down 100,000 plus on investment property at a 7% interest rate or something,
right?
And so that instantly just clicked for me. And I was like, this is a great way to go. So
it's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. I mean, and I actually have a Sub2 here in Redding that we're looking to sell too. And so it's becoming more of a thing, I think, in Redding slowly. Like, I think people are understanding more of it, but it's a situational thing. And I don't think it's not for everybody. So
right. It doesn't work for all deals. It's just a tool in your tool belt for trying to make a win-win. And I mean, do you see yourself doing more of these? And I mean, how is it just like one-offs where you're like, yeah, I'm open to buying these anywhere in the United States, or are you going to focus in areas where you already have rentals? Like, what's your strategy moving forward, scaling, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Right now, we're more focused just on capital is what our focus is, and just to be stabilized just with the investments we have and just to be wise. And so we're really more focused as far as getting that and getting just more grounded at what we already have. Going forward, it really depends. I mean, some areas we're really happy with, like as far as management, finding tenants, different things like that. And again, state laws, tenants. So I think it really depends. I believe hiring a long-term manager is nothing as far as considered hiring someone for short-term, like an Airbnb manager. And so I feel like as long as you have a strong management team, maybe a backup or two in place, you can operate these anywhere. I mean, as long as you have someone in place to handle the day-to-day tasks. So when it comes to subject twos, I'm not super focused in one area. There's states I'm really careful of. Florida, I'm really careful of right now because of insurance. Texas, California, all the same with insurance. But as long as the insurance is decent, property taxes and tenants, the laws as far as that goes, then we're looking at all those different areas. So it's not necessarily just one area for that. I could see us looking at more, South Carolina. Now we already have one out there. Makes it a little bit easier with management and everything if there's some in that nearby in that area. But I like to be more diversified and just more spread out, see different markets and different risks.
So cool. What would you say kind of looking, because did you say you've been an agent for 8 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What would you say are kind of like your main focuses like right now in this season with real estate and maybe the next couple of years? Like what do you most have your eyes on and kind of keeping tabs on as far as opportunity goes?
You mean as far as like what we want to purchase and
investment wise, I would say. Yeah.
I would say our main focus is on self-storage is going to be our main focus. Just how much we've learned with self-storage. The thing with self-storage is you're not going to have a lot of those subject to low interest rate opportunities as much. Mm-hmm. And so you're paying a premium for those properties. So I don't know if you're going to be able to find that to make the cash flow now. Essentially, it might be more of a long-term play. And then when it comes to, I just think the 2 to 4% interest rate is going to be the next asset class. I really do. I just think that you're going to start seeing, these interest rates are going to be more and more valuable just as time goes on. And so as long as it makes sense, the numbers make sense, or a partner. A lot of times I'll have partners that are interested in it, but they don't feel comfortable going it alone. So like the one in Arkansas, we brought in some partners and they funded the whole thing because they saw the interest rate and they're like, if you can get that interest rate and it's a 2021 build home, and they're like, yeah, we're all in. So we used our side for the experience and just did that whole deal. But so it really just depends on, if there's someone that wants to look at that, that's interested in it, or what comes across. So.
What were your down payments on your subject to properties?
The one in South Carolina was a little bit higher just because of the situation. I want to say it was close to 50, totally down, but we didn't put anything down. We got a private lender that did it. That's the other thing about subject to is it's so easy to get private lenders and there's no bank verifying. There's no anything. And you call a private lender and you say, I'm looking at a property with a 2.25% interest rate. This is the spread. This is the rents. They're like, where do I send it? It's pretty, it really makes it simple. So we did private financing on that one.
But it's not secure because they're not in first position, right? So how do they
They're
secure
not first position, they're second position. Yeah, they're secured in second position.
Like I know my lender wouldn't do that.
In second position, yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't do it. But it's interesting. It's cool to see that there's lenders that will do that.
Quite a few, especially in the communities, the subject to communities.
Yeah.
There are some people that don't want to own real estate. They just don't. They've had a bad experience. They don't want to be a landlord. They don't deal with it. And so they'll just lend all day long, 10 to 12% in second position. And they're just thrilled to be there. So
cool.
Different opportunities. Yeah. In that spot. But that one, and then I think Arkansas was closer to like 30,000 was our entry fee on that one.
Did you borrow money for that as well?
That was a private money partner. So we own it 50-50. They came in with all the funds and then we managed the whole property, set up the management, got everything running and located the deal for them.
Nice.
That's cool.
W-2 workers, we told them the deal. They were absolutely thrilled when we told them what it was. And they're like, you don't have to do anything. And this is it. And so we just set that way.
Yeah. Maybe you could speak a little more to that kind of partnership because I think I think it's just such a cool win-win when you find that kind of a setup where it's like, here you got someone who's, probably doing decently well financially, but they just don't have time. And then, on the other side, you have the other partner who's like, I can find the deal. I can manage the deal. I know how to do this. And you provide opportunity there. Like, I don't know, to people that are thinking about maybe on the either side of the equation, what could you kind of speak to when it comes to that type of partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think best thing I love about real estate is everyone can help out in one way or another. I mean, you could have no money that you want to put into a deal, but you could be calling. You could be calling for deals, driving for dollars. You could be helping someone out in that way. Or you could be a W-2 employee, like in this case, full-time nurse and another full-time employee, and they have absolutely no time to be looking for deals. And there's like, we should probably diversify. Everything we have is just in our Ross and whatnot. And so just explain to them the long-term potential, just kind of an overall look of that, like, hey, this is how this could look. Like if you don't have to worry about management tasks. You don't have to be involved in anything. But the number one I would say we've learned from that is communication. I don't think you can over communicate enough. I mean, when you have someone's money in a transaction, then I think you just have to over communicate with them and explain to them until they tell you maybe enough's enough. But, just to communicate them as much as possible, what's going on. And because a lot of it is the way we've structured it is it's for their learning benefits, for them to learn. So on the next one, maybe they're not 50-50, maybe they're more like 25% or, depending how involved they want to be. But there's a big component there where it's like, hey, we're willing to teach you what we know and learn, teach what we've avoided and how to do so. But a lot of times it seems like people just, they want to just have the investment, be with a trusted operator and just go from there.
I'm just curious to hear about your day. You're an entrepreneur, you're an agent, you're an investor. I'm just curious, like how you spend your time, like how much of your time goes into being a real estate agent, how much of your time goes into the properties that you own, and how much of your time goes into finding more deals. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's been a journey trying to learn too what that looks like in time management and just figuring out like what time you put and where you put in the timing. So of the day, I should say. So in the morning, I would say I'd probably say at least 3/4 of my day, if not more, is focused on real estate. Is focused on real estate sales, just working with clients, past clients, stays pretty busy. A lot of times too, things will intertwine too, which helps out. But I spend a lot of time just working with current clients and past clients. And then I try to keep everything afternoon as far as like later in the day, as far as like when I'm working on our portfolio or anything to do with that or talking to business partners or anything like that. So I try to structure it where I'm available for real estate sales as much as possible between 8 and 5, because that is our primary income right now. And what is nice about the East Coast, though, properties are, is I can handle all that super early. So I can sometimes be on the phones at 6, 7, even 5 a.m. and getting work done because they're 3 hours ahead. So that's always really nice. And then I can go in at 8 o'clock and have everything done and be a realtor and focus on that. So I try to break it up as far as that goes. When it comes to sourcing new deals, finding new deals, that can be pretty tough because, Ben, how it is. You get a text of like a really aggressive wholesaler, somebody that's really got something that needs your immediate attention, and you're like, I'm in the middle of this project or I'm middle working this. So that can be tough trying to figure out the right timing on that. But I think I can justify a lot of that, like when it comes to potential deals, because if it doesn't turn into a deal for me, it might turn into a deal for somebody else, and then I could still be a part of that in some way. So, but yeah, I don't know if that fully answers your question, but it's a learning. I'm continuing to learn how to do that as well.
Yeah. How much time do you think you put into, are you actively looking for more deals right now?
We're not personally looking for deals right now, just because we are focused just on capital and we want to be wise investors. I mean, even though we bring in these partners and they want to put down these down payments, we want to make sure we have plenty of reserves going forward. And so we're just trying to stay focused with that. So any new deals that come across right now, just trying to get to business partners or clients.
Or me. Can you send them to me?
Yeah.
Send me some deals.
Send you some stuff. I got that one ready, like I said.
Yeah. I think it's wise what you're saying. There is this kind of like ebb and flow and seasons of your investing journey of just like thinking about, are you asset heavy right now? Are you equity heavy? Do you need more cash? Do you have less cash? And it really allows you to think about what do you need to focus on? Like, I need to do some flips, or actually now's a good time. We have a lot of cash. Let's be more aggressive with buy and hold. And so it's cool to see where you're at in your season, where you're saying, hey, we've got this real estate business where we're agents. And so we want to build up that cash reserve. And you're seeing the value and the need for cash right now because you have long-term investments that are taking care of themselves. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're also just stepping into the deep water a little bit more. Like when it comes to flipping real estate, that is a scary place for me, and I never understood everyone jumping into flipping. Honestly, I was like, why would you start there? I was like, that sounds like the other way around. And it finally clicked. I'm like, capital, like you have to flip real estate to build that capital to get the long-term holds. Whereas for me, I just had a lot of different private investors, money partners that are like, hey, we're waiting for you to find the deal. I think a lot of that's just my real estate experience being in real estate. I had those relationships automatically already there around me. But now it's the other way around. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready to really start doing that. Like one cool strategy we did was a novation too. Really enjoyed that. That was really cool. We did that in Georgia and it was supposed to be a Sub2 transaction. I started looking at the numbers and I actually brought it to someone here local in town. And he's like, why don't you do a novation? I was like, I've heard of that. I don't really know what that all is. And just did a deep dive and research that. And essentially it's like you're doing a flip without ever owning the property is what it is. And so that was super cool and that was successful. And so we started seeing that. We're like, how else can we do, different transactions like this? So we still want to be involved in real estate and still do, whether it's flips or different things like that, helping out. But just our long-term holds, we're just kind of holding on that right now.
Can I ask you, Kevin, I have been very, very curious about novation agreements. Can you break that down a little bit more for us? And if you're willing to share even numbers or like how that, even negotiation work, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there and it's kind of a word a lot of people still just don't even know what it means.
Yeah. Well, and there's all different ways you can do it. And again, I use Creative TC. They did the whole novation and they were phenomenal. They did a great job.
Cool.
But they'll walk you through a lot of it. Cause I think a lot of these newer real estate subject to novation, these different things, you just got to have, that's why I like the who, not how. You just have to have somebody to help you walk you through it. And then you can learn as you go until you feel comfortable and work through it. Because if someone just told me about innovation, it would be like sitting in front of a fire hose. I would have no idea what they're talking about, especially my real estate background. Again, I'm like, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of such a thing. But no, so how we structured this one so the seller moved in 21 of December, I believe, and didn't make one mortgage payment the whole time he lived there because he's under the forbearance. So he lived there for free. He lived there totally for free, never made a mortgage payment. So we were brought the deal from a wholesaler that we've worked with before. And he said, so it needed a lot of money to catch it up to like take it over subject to. It's just going to need a lot. I think it was like 65, 70,000. I mean, it was a big chunk and the house was only 280, 300,000 right around there. So it didn't make sense to go that route. But the rate, again, was like 2%. So I'm like, oh, it's a phenomenal rate. And so anyways, that didn't work out, as far as like find someone to bring in that much to take over that rate. And so the seller was originally going to get like 10,000 for it. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty great deal for him. He never paid to live there for a year and then he's going to walk out 10,000. And sometimes I really make sure I find win-win-win for everybody. I think a lot of times, sometimes it's really wholesale heavy, it's really buyer heavy, and the seller gets nothing, or it's really seller heavy. And so I try to make sure it's a win-win for everybody, just it all makes sense. And so we were looking at this, trying to figure this out, how this is going to work. And so I believe on this one, we said, hey, if we do a novation, which we'll doing the flip with him holding the title, we would give him an extra 5,000. So he would get 15,000. He might have to wait an extra month for us to do the remodel, but we'll give him an extra 5,000. And of course, a seller has been living there for free. He's getting 10 and he finds out he gets 15 for a month more. Yeah, I'll make 5,000 a month. So that's what we did. So we structured it in that way where we sold the property and then we paid the wholesaler off, the seller off, and the mortgage off. And so the only thing we had to put into it was repairs. And it was a light cosmetic rehab. It was about 10,000, maybe 10 or 11. So we put 10 or 11 in it and our deposit, and that's it. That's the only cash we had invested into it. No lender fees, didn't have to pay any points, didn't have to pay anything like that. So at that point, I was sold on Novations. I was like, that's a great way to go. And then also, like, just from the whole perspective of it, like, the seller still signs off on it. You have an agreement. I mean, there's risk. There's definitely risk, but you have an agreement. You have a power of attorney. You have enough documents to protect you. But what was really interesting, to be honest, with Novation was I didn't even sign any closing documents. I never signed any closing documents. We just got this wire, and I was like, I didn't even review the title statement. And they're like, what's a Novation? You don't actually have to sign anything. So that was pretty interesting too.
And another way to do those deals is you can basically find a property, and instead of wholesaling it, you can list it for sale, right?
Yeah.
In a similar way where instead of wholesaling, assigning it to another agent, you basically sign power of attorney where you can list it and sell it on the market. Right.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we did. So we bought the property, we did the light renovation, and then we hired an agent. And there is certain agents that specialize in Novations. I mean, you'd probably talk to a lot of agents that are like, no, what? Like, they're not going to know what it is.
Right.
Even though it is all in our real estate books. I just had my renewal and it's all in there. I was like, wow, look at that. There it is. So it is in there. But yeah, we brought it to the market and paid commissions on which, again, all got paid out at the end. And the seller was fully aware of what we were doing. So yeah.
How much did you walk away with? What did you make on that deal?
That was our first one. I think we ended up close to 15 is what we made on it. But again, it wasn't like we were, they say you want to be around a 10% margin is kind of what the industry says, and we sold around the low threes. But again, it's our first one, and we were really aggressive on trying to sell it. So we weren't like, we could have probably kept the price a little bit higher for another month or two, but we're like, we don't want to lose the seller. We don't want to have any issues. So let's just try to get this done.
Yeah.
That's where it ended up.
It kind of reminds me of a wholesale, because I found a lot of those deals, you need to do like kind of a light cleanup or a little bit of a renovation, and then you list it with an agent. But it's weird. You wonder why a seller would ever agree to that. What are the reasons for sellers to agree to a novation?
Well, I think in this particular situation, it was the extra $5,000 that we offered him, because he had someone else interested in buying it from him, but he wasn't going to make that extra $5,000. So I think that was the biggest reasoning. The question I always have is, why wouldn't the seller just put it on the market themselves?
Yeah.
Deal with it. And I talked to him about that too. And he's like, I don't want to deal with agents. I don't want to deal with showings. I don't want to deal with false hope. I'm like, okay. Like, he was very clear that like he's had bad experiences, and he knew that was definite, because we put down a non-refundable deposit. So he knew, like, regardless, he was going to make some money. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think a lot of it is what I've seen here locally is some people don't have access to the funds to rehab the property. And so they say, hey, if we put this in the market, we'll make, 15, 20% more, but I'm going to have to invest my funds and my time into the property. And so I think can be a huge help for a seller, where if they were to sell an as-is condition, and maybe it's not financeable either, like the property is in such condition that it's not financeable, and so someone comes in, puts some money into it, makes the property financeable. Now they just have a whole lot more buyers that they just opened up to.
It's cool. This is the first time that I've ever had any conversation. Well, I don't think we've really talked much about Novations on here, so it's cool to talk to you about that. And I've also been very kind of a little bit like in the back seat looking through the window or the rear view mirror at Pace Morby's stuff. And that's been really inspiring to me, just kind of seeing what everyone's been doing. But, you kind of see a lot of all the different types of posts, the hardship. How do I deal with this? This is clearly there's several people that have been doing these Sub2s where it's like they didn't have a great TC and they didn't have the right contracts, and things can get really weird quick if you don't do the right thing on the front end. So it's cool to just talk to you and hear your recommendation for the TC group you used. And just honestly, I've loved the concept of a novation. I think without meaning to, that's actually the very first project I ever did was a novation technically, because I actually flipped my grandma's house without ever buying it. And
Nice.
and I remember getting done with it and I was like, I wish I could do more of those, but I don't know if anyone else is going to trust me like my grandma did. But then the further into like the journey I went, I started hearing people talk about novation agreements, and I was just like, is that the thing? I think that might be it. So, yeah, it's cool to hear about it.
Yeah, I would recommend if anybody wants to get into novations is to find an agent that does them like anywhere around the area, even if it's through social media or anything like that. And they will get you the connections. Like there's some agents that I've found that will just do novations. That's all they do. They specialize in it. Cool. They have sellers that call them for it, but they don't want to take it on, or funds or capital. And so there's so many connections out there. And I think there's easily a way if you just want to like dive right into that, you totally can.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Let's ask one fun question. What is something that you're excited about that you're learning right now? It could be real estate, could be business, could be anything, could be personal.
Excited about learning. It's a good question. Learning a lot. So that's a good question. You know, honestly, right now, we are getting so organized when it comes to our taxes and everything for the last few years. And I have really been excited about that because there's been so much information that has not been provided to me in the past.
Wow.
And so just I feel like we're finally getting a momentum of getting everything organized, learning about things heads up beforehand. We've just been advised, you got to be careful about taking advice from people out of the state of California, because California does have a lot of interesting tax laws. And we fell into that a little bit and some other things. And so I would say right now, I'm just really excited about getting all that squared up.
That's good. I've got a huge tax bill this year from last year. So I'm actually flipping a house so that I can pay that tax bill, which means I'll have more taxes to pay on that flip. And it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Well, it's been great having you on the show, and fun, like navigating all these different areas of real estate, especially stuff that's just not common, like novations and Sub2, and hearing how you're so creative with buying property. And I think that's what is needed in this market with high interest rates, people that don't have cash to invest. It's like, wow, like it's learning like how to do it, because if you know how to put a deal together, how to find the money, the who, not how, like that is really the competitive advantage in this market.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's really, really cool to hear from you. Thank you so much for sharing. And excited to hear where you go. I actually love the fact that you said the thing you're excited about is getting your taxes organized. I was like, we're talking to, this is honestly though, that's kind of like what it gets to after a while. It's like, do you have your taxes organized? So no, but I think just in general, really inspired by your story and the way you guys have just gone after it. So yeah, well, looking forward to seeing where you end up in the next couple of years with everything.
Awesome. You guys too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. We'll be in touch, and have a good day.
All right. You guys too.
All right. See you, bud.
See ya.